Welcome everyone to this ALISE webinar. It's really interesting information. I know that's why you've signed up for it. My name is Sue Allman and I'm going to play the role of moderator in today's session. And it's student perceptions and use of mobile devices for LIS coursework, implications for educators. And our presenters will go more in depth about this, but I've had a chance to review all of their slides. And I think there's some really wonderful applications for faculty to know about. If we could advance to the next slide, please. Just a few housekeeping items. You are in listen only mode. So if you have any comments, we invite you to make them throughout this session. Just please put them in chat. And if you have any questions, technical questions, just put them up in the questions section as well. We will be doing a discussion at the end of the presentation, followed by a Q&A. And today's recording will be posted in the member center of the ALISE website. And for accessibility, if you click on that link for your closed captioning services. So I would like to take this opportunity just to acknowledge our two presenters, Michael Stevens from San Jose State University and Nikki Rudiger, who is a recent graduate of the MLIS program at San Jose. And they're here to talk about the research that they conducted. So I will turn it over to the two of you.
Hello, I'm Nikki Rudiger. As Sue said, I live in Portland, Oregon, and I graduated from the San Jose State High School program in May. And I've been working with Michael over the course of my program and was excited to do this study with him. I'll let him introduce himself.
Cool, thanks, Nikki. Hi, I'm Michael Stevens. I'm an associate professor at the School of Information at San Jose State. I'm doing my best Gandalf interpretation there in the photo. And I'm just thrilled to get to talk to you all about this and to work with Nikki. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how this project came about. Next slide, please. Okay, just very quickly, in the handout section are all of the slides that we'll be going through, as well as a copy of the article that this webinar is based on that we published in LIS. How this project came about is Debbie Ferris, our Director of Online Learning at the School of Information, and I were talking a couple years ago about really wanting to understand how our students were using mobile devices in their coursework. And I was looking for a research project. I said, Debbie, let's do something on this. And she dove in. So she is our co-author. She is a lecturer emeritus. She has retired and just honored to work with Debbie and with Nikki on this. And to one of the things that we did set about doing is working with a student on the project. Next slide, please. Here's a quick timeline. Wow, it does go back to 2019. We did a call for an independent study student who would join us. In spring 2020, we started meeting and working on our lit review, our survey instrument, etc. All of those things are included in the article itself. And of course, then COVID hit. So that was we still were able to do the research because we were working all online, but it was, of course, I think a factor for everything. We submitted to LIS and we were accepted in January. And this is a note that we always made sure to say is that family and taking care of ourselves always came first. And that was, I think we're still like doing that and keeping that in mind. The article is published in volume 62, issue 4, and it is right there in the handouts for you. So I'm going to turn it over to Nikki to talk a bit, and then we'll keep going. Thanks.
Next slide, please. Okay, we're going to start here with where we started sort of with our research was, according to the Pew Research Center, 96% of Americans own a cell phone of some kind. And for our research study, we restricted mobile devices to be defined as only smartphones or tablets, not laptops. Next slide, please. And we want to have a poll here of our attendees. We could launch. Have you noticed an increase in your students using mobile devices, smartphones or tablets for coursework? You can go ahead and click your answer. I think. All right. Looks like we've got, majority of you say yes, you've noticed an increase in your students using mobile devices. That clocks with what we're seeing from our research. Let's go back to the slides, please. The next. Yep. So in our review of the literature on mobile devices, we are looking at how they're used in higher education coursework and how students felt about using them. And we found that mobile learning, or M-learning, supports both informal and formal learning, creating the opportunity for students to access and apply content while on the go. And Ginkas and Grant also examined authentic learning on the move, which enables activities to happen with any mode of delivery. And mobile devices, as we can see in many areas in our world right now, encourages transferability of skills to personal, social, academic, and professional contexts, and being able to create an effective foundation for lifelong learning. And integrating mobile devices into higher education coursework that helps to tear apart the existing barrier between real life and formal learning. Next slide. Seilhammer et al. Found that students felt that mobile devices made it easier to complete various tasks, such as giving them better access to coursework, providing opportunities for increased communication with other students, increasing their knowledge of course's target field of study, increasing communications with the instructor, increasing their motivation to complete the coursework, and helping to improve their quality of work. Next slide, please. So in our study, we wanted to answer the following questions. We wanted to see, how do students use mobile devices in their coursework? How are students perceiving the effectiveness and usefulness of mobile devices for their coursework? And how can instructors enhance online courses to enable mobile device access? Next slide. Current library and information science students take their courses on the go, moving easily between formal learning setting and an informal one, learning everywhere, and incorporating learning into real life. We're going to go into a little bit more detail about the questions we asked and how we came to these results. Mobile devices and applications in the cloud can be useful for giving students practical and creative experience across multiple channels throughout their LIS coursework. So here we'll go a little bit more into the findings. Our first question was, which devices do you use for coursework? And 88% of our respondents are using smartphones for coursework, if you combine iPhones and other smartphones. Next slide. And we gave them many applications to choose from to indicate which ones they use for their iSchool coursework, and most of them use the Canvas app and PDF readers for their coursework. So we dug a little deeper in the next slide, please, about how do they use the Canvas app on their mobile device. And the majority of respondents are using it to check grades, read announcements, access the modules, and send or receive messages. Next slide. And we asked if they access the King Library at San Jose State and its resources from their mobile device. And the majority of them said no. We didn't have a follow-up question about this response, which could, so we don't really know why that is or what barriers there are to using the King Library and its resources, which could be an area of future research. So next slide, please. We asked some open-ended questions about how they're using their mobile devices. So just generally, how are you using it in your coursework? And there's a lot of checking, communicating, consuming. And then we had this whole group of on the go, creating for everything. And so I'll just define a little bit what we mean by these different categories. Checking, for example, includes notifications like grades and deadlines, Canvas, modules and discussion boards, and assignments. Communicating means email, communication, texting, interaction, like posting on discussion boards, Zoom, using Twitter, social media, and completing group work. Consuming means reading, watching videos, lectures, and doing library research. And on the go is being out and about and away and doing small, quick, and easy tasks. Creating includes using Google Drive, submitting assignments, and taking notes or photos. And technology means using their mobile device as a hotspot or a second screen in their coursework. Okay, next slide. And then we asked, what can you not use your mobile device for? In that one, there was more of a spread over what they can't use it for, but that includes knowledge creation, and that would be things like long form writing, taking notes, annotating, and blogging. The device being incompatible means things like maybe Google Drive, Microsoft Documents, PeopleSoft sort of functions like with the San Jose State student interface. A desktop might be required, or switching between apps is awkward, or downloading files, submitting assignments, quizzes, and doing any printing. Reading means things like ProQuest ebooks or doing some scholarly research. In Canvas, we got this comment a lot about course discussions and viewing rubrics being very difficult to use with Canvas on the app. And video consumption is Zoom, like watching lectures, video, and Panopto, where the content was too large of a file or too high quality of a file to use their mobile devices for. Next slide. We asked then, how have your instructors made information accessible to use from your mobile devices? And the most reported way was by using Canvas, followed by posting videos, using email, and sharing PDFs. A lot of them didn't know how to respond to that question, and these responses may be more specific to an online program such as San Jose State University's iSchool, rather as opposed to an in-person program or a hybrid program. They may have a different response. Next slide, please. Then we asked, how can instructors make it easier for you to use your mobile device for your studies? And the majority of them didn't have any suggestions, but some did mention that the way that they organize their course site in Canvas, making sure that they're using Canvas, putting everything in there. So, deadlines, assignments, using links, using less text, using more media and graphics, and keeping content within Canvas rather than linking out from it. And then they also said using PDFs was one of the suggestions, as well as providing perhaps instruction on how to use their mobile device to access content, perhaps in like an introductory technology class, such as what is offered in the iSchool program, where there's kind of a user guide maybe about which apps might be helpful to access from your phone in your coursework. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so we have another poll for you. Do you have any interaction with students via messaging or SMS on mobile devices? I'll give that a minute. Okay, so it looks like the majority of our guests here today do not interact with students via messaging or SMS on mobile devices. That's interesting. And we can talk a little bit more about that at the end. I think I'm going to pass this on to Michael to discuss our results.
One more slide, please. Thank you. Nikki, thank you for going through all the data. So we took all of the data, we did some content analysis, and that led to some of the things that Nikki presented, like what the students were doing, checking, etc. And then we took a look overall at everything they said and sort of put together the story. And I really, any research I do, I always want to tell a story with it, to sort of tell the story of how a certain segment of students, mobile device users, are coming to their coursework with these devices. And up front, just to remind you all, up front we said for this research, we counted smartphones and tablets as mobile devices, not laptops, because those tend to be more like the desktop type thing, but the actual handheld type thing on the go. So a couple of things we found. The findings point to an anytime, anywhere ubiquitous learning, and that also was highlighted in the literature review, and two ideas for all of us in LIS education to consider going forward. What we can do with the concept of learning everywhere and the rise of the student power user. So hold that thought about the power user, and we'll come back to that. But let's go back to 2012 to the Horizon report. And this was a big deal 10 years ago. And I remember like telling everybody I could when I was out speaking, like, we got to be aware of this, that the Horizon report said people expect to be able to work, learn, and study whenever and wherever they want to. It does not have to be, oh, I'm going to do my classwork and I'm going to light a candle and I'm going to make this perfect space where it happens. It might be, as our research said, on the bus, at a program at a winery where the student took a few minutes out of listening to the band and did a few things on her phone, which I thought was a really interesting answer. Yeah, here's the bus commute. One of our respondents said, I am mostly checking emails, reading discussion posts, and reading class readings on my bus commute. So 2012, learning everywhere. Here we are in almost 2022. And if anything, there's so much going to come out on the other side of the pandemic that we will probably take away, is that all of these tools available to us like this, and it's a lot better technology than it was in 2012, allow us to do that learning everywhere thing. So next slide, please. Okay, let's talk about the student power user. And I was the one that pushed to include this because I think it's really interesting. We had, I don't remember the exact number, I think around 200 students answer the survey. A very small number, I want to say it was between 5 and 10. And one of the questions said, here's what I do. And they gave us, this is one answer from one student. And this student put such a fine point on everything they do with their iPad, maybe with their mobile phone. I'm doing my readings, I'm traveling, I sometimes create a working doc for assignments on my iPad, saved to my Google Drive, then I finalize on a laptop or a desktop for final submission. The Google Drive is a backup of everything. See, that's brilliant. I tend to search the library on a computer, but if I'm interested in an ebook, I will redo the search on my iPad so that I can download it. Here's a suggestion. It'd be nice if there was a way that I could send an ebook to my device somehow without needing to redo the search. That's kind of cool. Canvas notifications come to the phone. This student gets a message when an assignment has been graded, checks Canvas, leaves downloading feedback until maybe on the computer and better control where I'm saving to. Saving a file to a drive from other apps is sometimes buggy on mobile. And I have also participated in Zoom conferences via the iPhone app, often dialing in when I had poor internet connection. And I use my phone to take pictures for assignments that involve library visits. So we have between 5 of these really in-depth answers where they unpacked exactly what they do with their devices, which absolutely fascinated me. Just finished the semester here in the 2 classes I teach, Information Communities and a class called the Hyperlink Library. And this was like on display, especially in the Info 287 class, the Hyperlink Library, which is for students that have sort of gone through the course, so it's a little farther along. They're probably much more comfortable in the all online environment. I had a student that did a big project on TikTok, and then to do her final like summary of everything I learned in my class in the Hyperlinked Library, she did an actual TikTok video. It was brilliant. She had like a little puppet thing that was her doing all the talking, and it was made so it would TikTok loops. Okay, and here's the thing. I don't use TikTok, didn't know a thing about TikTok, so I so appreciated the student's work. And I told her that when I evaluated it and graded it, like, wow, I learned a lot about the TikTok. And her video was just so perfect, and the whole class got to see it in our online blog environment. And that really was like a real-time, just happened example of the student power user. Next slide, please. And I guess that would be my question to you all. It's not in our discussion, but we'll try to tuck it in there. Have you had a student mobile device power user? So let's talk about what that means for us. And here are some implications for those of us in LIS. And really, this study, it's not super tied to LIS, although I think the accessing the library side part of it is super interesting. And as Nikki said, I think future research would be really interesting to talk to academic librarians who are supporting students about how students are coming into library resources with mobile devices. And back to our power user, is there some way that that could be almost seamless, that if you download an ebook in the academic resources, library resources, maybe here, it also goes to all your devices. So here's some implications. First and foremost, across all of the data was please, please, please use a PDF. It is friendly. It opens easily in just about everything. It looks good on a phone. It looks good on a tablet. It looks good on a computer. And we said it probably would be a good idea to provide access to PDF files via very clear links so they know what they are and that they are PDFs. And then if you provide links to content such as readings or recorded lectures, that will make it super easy as well. All of these things can be linked directly from your hopefully mobile-friendly modules in Canvas or whatever LMS you use, etc. And then when providing recorded content, students recommend using tools and formats that are mobile friendly. For example, YouTube, Panopto videos, Zoom videos that are exported as .mp4s, those things can play across multiple devices. Really fine point here is some of the tools allow playback speed controls. All of my lectures are recorded in Panopto, and I believe those you can actually change the speed, as well as they also have captions, audio only, and Panopto provides a downloadable video podcast, which can super go on anywhere you're going, like on the bus or whatever. And I've had students say, I watched your lecture on my commute, and this is what I thought, blah, blah, blah. Multiple formats, again, with all the ways that they might get access to the content. Captions, audio only, even if they just want to hear your voice and then maybe go back and review the video or the slides. Students appreciate those things. And they also really appreciated the use of Canvas, or if you're on a different LMS, probably whatever notification, communication, email type thing that it happens in that system. that offers pushes, that would be really good, because then that notification pops right up. Because wouldn't it be nice, you know, the student is waiting for their research paper grade, and ding, it pops up, and they can get right in and read your feedback, see what grade they got, and then, you know, they're on holiday break or whatever. So next slide, please. And finally, as part of the article in JELIS, I just want to talk about this briefly. This is a big wordy slide. We addressed creative course delivery, and I believe that was like the theme of the issue that we're in. So here are some more thoughts from us to you on how you might use some of these things, or use mobile apps, devices, etc. Aim to do a lot of things in the cloud. Google Drive, Adobe Cloud, I use Dropbox a lot. Any of the social media sites like TikTok, and that student also made her TikTok available. I have it right here on my desktop. So I could download it and keep it as well. So what that does is it gives them easy access from wherever they happen to be. My slides are coming from ALISE right now. They are also living in the cloud here on my iPad, so I can see them as I'm scrolling through, and I was following along with Nikki both here and there, so I could see what was coming next. So that ease of access is super cool. And we want this for our students. We want them to utilize applications that they could soon be using in their professional positions. Think about what we're doing, or what that student was doing with their TikTok. Maybe she gets hired and they're like, okay, we want you to do videos, we want you to share them, we want this, this, and this. Can you do that? And she's like, oh yeah, I did that in my coursework. Let's set up a Dropbox, or let's use Google Drive, and we're going to get all this organized. That's exactly what we want them to do. The second point is the concept of communication everywhere. And we should look for ways to encourage students to communicate and collaborate with each other via mobile devices and apps beyond the regular channels built into our learning management systems. You might have groups that meet in other places, in other formats, in Slack or whatever, to work on their projects. Again, they're getting that good experience in a lot of different platforms. Our data said that students appreciated ease and convenience of being able to check in and talk to others in classes. One of the things we do at San Jose State School of Information is we have a gigantic multi-user WordPress installation where every student has a blog, and there's like a little bit of social networking going on too, with user profiles and groups, and they can make forums where they can share and talk. And we have a lot of student-driven forums there. It's a platform for the students to connect and talk with each other. Other strategies might include giving students the opportunity to ask instructor questions via text. And we had that poll question. So 64% of you said, no, that's not happening yet, but that might be something you'd want to do. And we're not saying you're going to give everybody in your class your home phone number or your mobile device number so they can text you, but you could set up a messaging app with an email address, especially if you use any of the Apple products, and be available for a quick, like, hey, professor, I'm working on this quick question, and you can get right back to them, like, boom, like, oh yeah, oh, I'm waiting in line at the Costco, I'll answer you, that's cool, tap, 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 and then that's done. Whatever you're comfortable with, we would urge you to do that, to make yourself available. Also use apps that send texts or push notifications so the students can know what's going on, they can be in group projects, all of those things. And then finally, images and video, and I can't stress this enough. We would argue seriously for using for creative uses, of creating and sharing images and video. And my TikTok example is one. I had some of the best produced, like little 5 to 10 minute videos of students doing their we do a 3-2-1, what you're taking away from the course thing, or just a final reflection via video, like these really nice setups. It was just so well produced. I love that. And guess what? They're getting that experience again for doing content creation that will be done in libraries. And again, the pandemic hits as we start this research, and suddenly libraries are taking everything they do practically into Zoom or onto video delivery, like via YouTube, etc. So it just really makes a lot of sense to us. So we would also say for instructors to do this as well. Look for ways to be very creative with sharing images and video. Imagine going out and about with your lectures, if that is something you can do. I do my final videos for my classes out on the trail. Hi, I'm coming to you from Northern Michigan right now too. I should have told you that. And this last week, as classes were ended, I love it when this happens. I did my recording in the falling snow because it's fun. We've got students all over the world. It's kind of interesting. So you can do this as well. You don't have to go outside if you don't want to, but think about how you might expand what you do with video. I'm going to make a shout out here and now to Dr. Jenna Hartel and her YouTube channel looking at information behavior theories and models, and looking at certain articles that are like timeless in our profession, and just doing these amazing little videos. We're using them in our class, Information 200 now. Absolutely. So yay for Dr. Hartel. Thank you so much for those. Maybe she'll get to see this someday. But maybe take some inspiration from that. Do whatever, what makes you comfortable, and try it out. So, okay, next slide, please. And I think we're at the point where we're going to ask you all to chime in a bit via the chat. So go ahead and just go to the next one. We have some questions just to engage with you for a little bit here. So please feel free to chit chat with us if you would. So how have you observed your students using mobile devices in their coursework? Throw something in the chat if you don't mind.
Michael, while this is Sue, while they're
Sue, thank you.
While they're putting things in the chat, there had been a question during one of Nikki's slides.
Absolutely.
That said, can you elaborate the literature review information that mobile devices help increase the quality of student work?
Yeah, I can address that.
Yeah.
I think, as Michael had mentioned, in addition to being a way for students to communicate and collaborate with instructors and peers, the mobile devices can be a tool for students to create content and personalize the way that they interact with their course content. So all these examples that Michael gave in our courses about, creating infographics or making YouTube videos or TikToks or being able to photograph library visits or, as part of their assignments, they can create these sort of multimedia works that are more applicable to what they're going to be doing after they finish their programs. And that for some, that might be a switch from doing a traditional paper where it's just something that you've written up, but that's sort of increasingly what our world is becoming, where the things are more interactive and more multimedia style.
I put the link to that specific article in the chat. So you can follow up, and there's a URL, I believe, for it.
This is Sue again, and I can see the link. I just wanted to say that I use VoiceThread in most of my upper level courses, and it was very difficult until recently for students to post recordings using a mobile device. But just in the last couple months, Canvas and VoiceThread made some changes so that now students can be able to participate fully in VoiceThread discussions. and post them. So it's always been, I don't know if people are familiar with VoiceThread, but it's an opportunity for everyone to use audio, video, as well as text, as opposed to a traditional text discussion. And they can do it from anywhere. So you can do it, as you said, Michael, out in the snow. People will do it on buses while they're waiting in traffic. But the problem was that they couldn't post to the assignment. And so they would have to use a laptop to do that. So that has all changed. So that's one way I've observed students. And if other people, participants would post things in the chat, that would help our discussion.
And I'll follow up on something that Nikki said about maybe going beyond the research paper, the standard thing. I am on the university writing committee, and it's a big committee, and we've had some discussions about what counts as writing. And one of the other professors on the committee said, well, what if instead of a research paper, a student writes a podcast script or a play or something that might even be more media based? And it's just very interesting to think about what that might look like. And we can certainly go on to the next question. Please feel free to throw anything into the chat. But yeah, what are the upsides or benefits to students using mobile devices to complete their coursework? Maybe we've made a case for it, but is there other thoughts that any of you might see?
I might jump in and share here as a student that I completed the iSchool program while also working a full-time job and parenting 2 children, and being able to use my cell phone to listen to lectures on my commute, to take notes as I was, listening to those lectures, or to, as I observed things, oh, I have this idea for my paper. I'm nowhere near my laptop. I'm going to just write it here in my notes and I can access it later. To create, using it to take pictures of library visits for, reference services or hyperlinked libraries. It was an incredible tool to have in addition to communicating with the instructors or my peers for doing group projects as well.
Nice.
I just put something into chat. I got a response that was supposed to be sent to the entire group saying that students feel more vested in the projects when they're using mobile devices.
I like that. Well, there are studies that say people really think about their phones as an extension of their lives. So if your university work is in your phone, it is absolutely, you probably are a bit more vested. And we can go on to the next question. And this one is, what challenges have you seen? We highlighted some, and it's nice to hear from Sue that VoiceThread did some things to make it even easier for sharing, saving. Are there any challenges that you have observed?
Well, this is Sue again. I'll pop in till others things in chat. But I think it's the faculty, the instructors, knowing how to do it. People might really be in favor of it, but what is going to be the most impact? How do we learn it? And we're talking about accessible to a mobile device. We also have to pay attention to accessibility issues for visually and hearing impaired individuals. So I think it's the training that LIS educators may need. Right. We've got a very quiet group, and I know you're all interested in this. Please.
Let's just go right on to the questions and comments slide. Let's just see what if folks are waiting to ask a question, or if you have any ideas about how you have enhanced the student experience with mobile devices, throw those thoughts in. Any questions or comments?
Well, I do have a question. It's Sue once again. I'm sorry to take up all
Thanks,
this.
Sue.
But on one of the very early slides, there was a really high statistic of like 96% of people own mobile phones. Did I get that right?
Mm-hmm. That's
But,
from Pew.
yeah, see, I question that because you see so many instances where families may just have one mobile phone among them, and the children are struggling to do their homework
Mm-hmm.
on that one phone. So I'm wondering if it's more really a question about Pew's, how they came to that statistic more
So
than anything.
there's the link, and that would be, yeah, that would be good to take a look and see exactly what they were doing. And that is from 2019.
And it says more infrequent engagement in online discussions, which I think might be related to having more student engagement, to be student to student rather than student to instructor. That's also a question. I think that, like, as Michael discussed, like having these like blogs and online discussions in Canvas or other LMS software could then create these rooms or spaces where students can then use their devices to connect with each other about topics, whether it's an assignment or just you know, floating around ideas for a research project or something like that. Let's see. Sorry, there's suddenly a bunch popping up in the questions, which is great.
Yeah.
That's great.
I'll say to Kim, thank you. And then Kim said, I have found that students get lost between the many different tools in the LMS. Was that in the discussion or in the blog or whatever? Was that here or there? I agree with that. So we have to do everything we can for usability, user experience, information architecture. But on the other side of the coin, I would say that's kind of the way everything works too. You kind of have to figure out that you're going to be moving across multiple things, although I'm all about a well-organized course.
Let's see. There's a concern about perceived informality of mobile devices. I think that's a fair concern that's out there. I think that's shifting. What do you? How would you respond to that, Michael?
I would say the same. I'm looking actually for that
from Alexis. Let's see here.
Yeah. Yes, I think I would agree with Nikki. I think that informality or perceived informality is changing. Yeah, I think again, the cell phone, the smartphone, in many people, this is a generalization. It is an extension of their lives, and I can't cite where that came from, but I have had it in a slide for a very long time. So it kind of transcends that. If you're running everything off of your phone, like the family calendar and email and everything, yeah, I think that formality is fading away. There's one I want to go up to, Charles. Do we need to teach students how to make videos, etc., if they are going to submit them as coursework? That's interesting. Yes, because there probably is a bit of a disparity between someone who knows how to do it, they're skilled YouTubers or whatever, and maybe a student that has not had that practical experience. That's one of the things we do is we offer in our program a lot of opportunity to create media artifacts so they get that practice. Second part of the comment, I think multi-format assessment outputs need to relate to learning outcomes to make them equitable. I would agree with that, and I think that's something really interesting to think about, that how do you grade, if you have an assignment where you can submit a video or a research paper or whatever, how do you fairly grade those items? Charles, thanks for that. Michelle says her institution's interpretation of FERPA has led to some narrower policy constraints than you've outlined also. That's interesting. And if you want, maybe tell us a little bit more about that in the chat.
Well, while
Nikki,
she's doing that, Kim had a comment that students can get lost in the LMS, not remembering where something is. So it needs to be very clearly organized. But they're taking multiple courses. Each course is designed differently, so it's hard to keep things straight. So that is one concern.
Absolutely.
I would say as a student, and I had the experience of having my first course being incredibly well organized. It was very clear where everything was, no problems whatsoever. And I expected that sort of to happen throughout the rest of my courses, but they were different classes. And so they were in different places. And I agree, like Michael said, it's part of its information, architecture and how we organize and share the information, but it's also a real life skill to learn, like things aren't going to always be where you expect them to be either. And that goes, that's something that you're going to have to exercise no matter what tool that you're using. But there's definitely things that instructors can do to make that process easier.
So while we were talking, Michelle added some things about they're not allowed to use the Google Suite for anything.
Oh,
and what else?
Discord. I just had a project on Discord.
Well, San Jose has really gone gangbusters over Google Suite. That's a difference. And Michelle, you're at University of Florida or Florida State? Florida State, yeah. Oh, and Charles says they have a template to keep Moodle consistent for all courses. San Jose has a template, but it's not mandatory. So we have one for the university, there's one for the iSchool, and all new faculty coming in are encouraged to use that template, but everyone has differences. And Michael, you use WordPress exclusively.
I do. Except I grade in Canvas. Everything's submitted into Canvas. Michelle, thank you for the "we're not necessarily quiet" comment. I'm struggling a little bit myself.
And Virginia has asked in response to Michelle, and I'm assuming that you can't even use it even if it's an enterprise installation of G Suite? That's a question.
Okay.
So our mouths are all open, Michelle, with that one.
Yeah.
I think we've gotten to all the questions and comments, but if we've missed any, would you mind putting it back in there?
The two handouts, the article has all the references in it, of course, and that the question we had about Pew, and then the other question about, I believe it was Cellhammer.
Well, we're getting close to the end of our time.
Yeah.
But if anyone has another comment or a question, I think the research that the two of you have undertaken, along with Debbie, the three, is really important to know about. And as more people are learning new apps, expanding the use of their mobile devices, we need to keep in touch with them, whether we have exclusively online like we do at San Jose, hybrid, or in person to continue that in-person learning beyond the actual face-to-face situation.
Mhm. Could we go to the next slide, please? We have our email addresses there if anyone would like to ask a question or make a further comment.
Well, Michelle says, that said, she's mostly been mobile with undergrads for about 10 years, and it works great.
That's good.
Is that mobile courses or communication, just not proprietary things like G Suite? Okay, everything. She doesn't expect them to have anything other than a phone.
Wow, cool.
Well, thank you to ALISE for hosting this. Thank you
Thank you.
and Michael for your research and for presenting it to us. And thank you to our participants and attendees today. So please continue to contact Nikki and Michael if you have other thoughts or questions.
Cool. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your participation and questions. Appreciate that.